Thank you all, and God bless you for being here. My talk today is a little unusual for me. I have no jokes, but then this is not a thing I'm supposed to joke about. I'd like to begin with a question that does not seem to occur to proponents of abortion. What must a country become, or already have become, if abortion is permitted? I don't mean to say here that there is simply evil in the world, and if you perform an evil deed, you yourself are your first and most injured victim. Because that principle would apply in a healthy society as well as in a sick one. If an Amish farm boy assaults his neighbor's daughter, he throws the doors wide open for Satan to enter his heart. Or if you want to speak psychologically, he begins to bind himself to an evil that will render him less and less able to love a woman for herself, or a simple being. But we wouldn't say that the Amish community itself was sick. In fact, they probably understand far better than the pro-abortion feminist professor of sociology does just why what that youth has done is to be condemned. I don't mean simply to say that a country, such a country that allowed abortion, would be sick. The question is, what exactly is the sickness? I want to be careful here, because we're talking about human beings, we're not talking about machines. So I see a greenish fluid dripping from the bottom of my car. I surmise that I have a leak in my automatic transmission. The transmission is only a part of the car. Its relationship to the rest of the car is strictly a matter of position. One thing being next to another thing, and acting on it mechanically. A machine is only a very distant imitation of a body, and not a very good one either. The sick man lying on his bed of death is something utterly different from a broken down car. The whole of the man, all of his history really, is involved in each part. The pain he feels invades his mind, but his mind can embrace that pain, attempt to rise above it. He is other than his sickness, even if there is not one member of his body that is not sick. So what I'm trying to do here is avoid the mistake of our materialist opponents. They don't really know what a human being is, and so they can never know what a human society is. They're spellbound by modern science's facility with machines, so they think mechanically. If a tank springs a leak, you plug it up, and that is their approach to all political and social problems. You can call it plugging or soldering. Jane is pregnant, she doesn't want her child, clean out the womb. That's that. But our sickness is not just that we allow abortion, I'm saying here today. Nor is abortion just a predictable consequence of some underlying sickness, in the same way that coughing up blood is a predictable consequence of tuberculosis. If abortion were made illegal tomorrow, as it ought to be, we would still be a terribly sick people. We're still a people for whom abortion is conceivable, even desirable. What kind of people are we? I want to turn to a philosopher, a Catholic philosopher, named Gabriel Marcel. A great philosopher. Tough to read, but a great philosopher. He asks us in a book called Reflection and Mystery to consider somebody who's totally vulnerable. Quote, a sleeping person, especially a sleeping child. Sleeping child. If we think only of physical action, he says, the sleeping child is completely unprotected and appears to be utterly in our power. From that point of view, it is permissible for us to do what we like with the child. Of course, he's speaking ironically here. To do what we like with the child. It's a terrifying phrase. Anybody remember the end of the movie To Kill a Mockingbird? Yeah. It was on last week, I believe. Boy has been brutally attacked by an evil and vindictive man. He is lying unconscious in his bed. His arm is in a sling. Doctor says he will live. Standing at the bed is his little sister and the man-child who killed the attacker and saved their lives. That man-child does not speak a single word in the film. We never learn whether he can. The children had been afraid of him and his haunted house, ruled over by his own heartless and wicked father. But now he stands there, as innocent as a child. The sister is small enough to take his hand and not feel embarrassed by it. "You can pet him, boo," she says. She's reading his mind. "He's asleep. He'd never let you do it if he was awake." And the man gently brushes the boy's hair on his forehead. The director doesn't have to tell us that we're in the presence of the holy. That's not a machine in the bed. It's a being, irreducible to a list of facts or measurements. It's not a machine that strokes his head. It is a being, one who responds to the holy, Marcel says. From the point of view of mystery, we might say, just because this being is completely unprotected, that it is utterly at our mercy, just because of that, it is sacred, invulnerable, he says. So, there are three elements in Marcel's insight here. I'm going to touch on each of the three today. Mystery, invulnerability, which means, by that he means, you can't wound it, you mustn't. And holiness. So I take them one by one. Mystery. In the same movie, the good lawyer Atticus Finch is giving a lesson to his children on right and wrong. He received this lesson from his own father. When the old man gave him his first rifle, he said, though he wanted him to shoot mostly at tin cups in the backyard. He knew that all boys would eventually aim at birds. Okay, you can kill the blue jays if you could hit them, because blue jays rob other birds' nests and are a nuisance. But it was a sin to kill a mockingbird, because all the mockingbird does is sing his heart out and give people pleasure. And if we listen closely to some of the outdoor scenes in the movie, we can hear a mockingbird singing out, cheerfully and mysteriously being itself, unaware that there's any such thing in the world as a movie or evil. Now there's a mystery in that songbird, in the mere fact that it is, and that it is what it is. The mystery is not reducible to the analysis by materialists. Charles Dickens struck to the heart of this mystery in a satire against materialist education called Hard Times. A girl named Sissy is brought up among performers and their animals in a circus. She's sent to school. The school is run by one Thomas Gradgrind. He is a type of the modern man who admits only facts. And because he admits only facts, he knows practically nothing. Call it the Common Core for the 19th century. Unfit for human consumption. So Gradgrind asks her on the first day of school for her definition of a horse. And she's struck dumb. The model student, Bitzer, who turns out to be an evil and selfish fellow when he grows up, he gives the reply to the effect that a horse is a graminivorous quadruped, and so forth. The irony is that Sissy has spent her entire young life among horses. She knows horses, meaning she's entered into a human relation with the creatures. I don't mean simply that she knows more than Bitzer does. Her knowledge is of completely different order. We might even say that she is content with not knowing. That is, admitting that you can never come to an end of beholding and admiring the beauty and nobility of that gentle animal with the warm breath and the massive chest. To the extent that we are materialists, to the extent we assume that only what the natural sciences do qualifies as knowledge, to that extent we can't enter into a fully human relation with anything. Marcel, for instance, gives us an example, the painting of the Dutch master Jan Vermeer, painting his view of the city of Delft, Why should he paint that landscape? Marcel says, nothing at our present level of discourse can allow itself to be reduced to mere relationship of cause and effect. If for Vermeer the view of Delft had been a mere spectacle, that is to say, just something to analyze, if he'd been reduced to the condition of mere spectator, he would never have been able to paint that picture. In fact, says Marcel, he would not have been an artist at all. To wonder, to admire, is already, he says, to be receptive in an active, alert manner. But beings incapable of admiration, he says, are always at bottom sterile beings. Perhaps sterile because exhausted, because the springs of life are dried up or choked in them. And that might explain why the actual science of human embryology doesn't seem to matter to our politicians and judges and doctors, patients and scientists who want to do away with the unwanted child. I want to suggest to you that their ignorance is not, in their case, many of the women who get abortions, they are ignorant of fact, but not these people. Their sickness is not ignorance of fact, it's numbness to mystery. Marcel compares the attitude of the artist, which is contemplative and receptive, with the attitude of a technician. An artist painting a flower as something little as a flower must participate in the flower's mysterious being. But the ambition of a genetic manipulator is quite different. In some sense, says Marcel, it implies a refusal to participate, a blank negation. He suggests that from the religious point of view, it is something essentially sacrilegious. So it won't just do to prove to our opponents that the baby is human. It might have done 50, 70 years ago, but not now. Biologically speaking, the scientists, the politicians, they know that it is. They simply have lost the capacity to wonder at that truth. We're arguing with spiritual robots. When we use their form of speech, we employ a scientific language which they who think themselves scientists receive as a kind of robotics. I don't think I'm exaggerating here. A friend of mine, a great writer, First Things, recently quipped that every young materialist these days dreams of growing up to be a robot. Can only deal with what is strictly predictable. Chalk it up to the machines we've grown up among. Machines of government, machines of economy, machines of entertainment, and, may the Lord help us, machines of education. Technical processes, Marcel says, have emancipated themselves today from the ends to which they should remain subordinate. So we have become the tools of our tools. The retired Pope Benedict's teacher, Romano Guardini, said the same thing. He said, man in our age has relinquished his responsibility over power. He's no power over the machines he has made. So the demonic rushes in to take over the responsibility. And by demonic, Guardini does in fact mean Satan. In what Marcel calls the Moloch state, you all know Moloch from the Old Testament. Marcel was calling our state in the 1950s, 1948, 49, the Moloch state. In that state, there can be no place for the weak, the unproductive, the houseless children, whom Dickens, again Dickens' most famous social machinist, Ebenezer Scrooge, wishes would die so as to decrease the surplus population. Again, thinking of things as machines. So we move to the second point. The sleeping child should be untouchable, invulnerable, precisely because he's weak and at our mercy. But we perceive him as disposable, because we've made proletarians of our souls. We accept the judgment of our demon taskmasters. They tell us over and over, and that's what kids learn in schools for 16 years, that we are worth only what we can do. And we agree. We are serfs in white collars. Think again of Jem Finch, the boy in To Kill a Mockingbird, on his bed. Or think of the small naked baby, utterly helpless in the womb. Marcel didn't have the stainless steel ugliness of abortion in mind, but he might as well have, when he condemned us for our numbness to the child. He says, there can be no doubt at all that the strongest, most irrefutable mark of sheer barbarism that we could imagine would consist in the refusal to recognize this mysterious invulnerability. That is, how do you know you have a barbarian there? The barbarian does not recognize that the child, precisely because it's weak, or the aged because they are weak, should be considered untouchable. Well, barbarians, in fact, were a good deal better than that, but we can forgive Marcel his use of the word in this case. He's writing shortly after the systematic, technical, scientific horror of Nazism and in the midst of the comparable horrors of communism. But what he says applies to us too. The more it might be said, the ideas of efficiency and output, outcomes. What do you send your kids to school for? Outcomes, output. The more they assert their supreme authority, the more this attitude of reverence towards the guest, towards the wounded, towards the sick, will appear at first incomprehensible and then later absurd. And there's no more vulnerable and therefore invulnerable guest than the child in the womb. Father Guardini extends the insight to any world in which people have chosen to put themselves at the mercy of technical power. The defenselessness of childhood, the special nature of woman, the simultaneous physical weakness and rich experience of the aged, all lose their metaphysical worth. The urge to rid ourselves of supposedly unproductive citizens is another expression, he says, of the whole fabric of our present-day life, with its rationalization and mechanization, its techniques of forming public opinion, and its control of education. That's Guardini writing in 1948. So there's a spiritual connection to draw between people who slay the child in the womb and people who corrupt or pervert the child's innocence. I used to believe there had to be something diseased about somebody, say a teacher in a school, who could look upon a defenseless child and say, I am going to introduce this boy to the peculiarities of sexual behavior and desire, and think well of himself for it, to be a pedagogical pedophile. I now suspect that such a person is not so bad as that, and yet worse. He, these days, is more like a she in the school. It may not be leering at that innocent child. If you've taught yourself to behave as a cog in a pedagogical and social machine, you're not going to see the innocence of the child, because you're not really going to see the child at all. The boy or girl is just a unit of social production. The categories of boy and girl will have lost their meaning, and that brings us to holiness. We beg our fellow men to recognize the holiness of the child in the womb. In doing so, we seem to beg them to extend to that unborn child a quality that all human beings intuit. But they don't recognize any holiness. And we who do recognize it can hardly make ourselves understood. It's not so much that we speak a different language, it's that we dwell in a world of spiritual depth, but their world is flat. We might as well be trying to praise the green grass to the colorblind. We can make ourselves understand colorblindness in a way because we all lose most of our sense of color in the moonlight. Can we engage in a similar active imagination, or disimagination, to bring to our minds what this spiritual blindness is like? Not to be able to understand the word holy. What's that like? So now I turn to another scene involving the murder of children, Shakespeare's Richard III. The ambitious Richard has deposed his nephew, the boy King Edward V. He shut him and his younger brother up in the Tower of London. He has seized the crown. But he knows that his claim to that crown is shaky, so he wants the boys murdered. He suborns for the task a desperate man named Tyrrell. Tyrrell accepts it. But he does not himself perform the deed. He hires it out to another couple of people he calls fleshed villains, bloody dogs. We don't actually see this murder on stage. We learn about it more profoundly than any sight of it could teach us, because we learn about it by the report of Tyrrell, an evil man, alone on stage, speaking to us. And Tyrrell has not been able to eradicate from his soul all sense of the holy. He is an evil man, but he still understands what is holy. Tyrrell tells us what his villains told him. He repeats their very words. The boys were sound asleep in a single bed. A prayer book lay at their pillow. Their arms were thrown about one another, and their lips were like 4 red roses on a stalk. We smothered, says one of the killers, the most replenished sweet work of nature that from the prime creation ere she framed. They left Tyrrell so struck with conscience that they could not speak. The killers are not spiritually blind, so we have hope for them. Tyrrell is not spiritually blind. Now Richard enters the stage. Kind Tyrrell, am I happy in thy news, he asks. Tyrrell's reply is ambiguous. If to have done the thing you gave in charge beget your happiness, be happy then, for it is done. Notice that the murder has become the thing. Richard has placed walls between himself and the thing. He hires a killer who hires killers in his turn. They tell him what they did, Tyrrell tells us, but now he informs Richard only of the bare fact. He doesn't tell Richard all the rest that he has told us. Didst thou see them dead? Asks Richard, eagerly. I did, my lord. And that's all Tyrrell says. And buried, gentle Tyrrell. The chaplain buried them, he says, but he doesn't know exactly where. And that's that. That's it. Richard goes on to bustle about the stage in the realm of England until his ambitions are put to a sorry end at Bosworth Field. But notice the difference between Tyrrell and Richard. They are both murderers. But the hired man does more than tower above the master in moral possibility. It's as if Shakespeare is saying to us, Tyrrell and we live in the real world in which sleeping children are holy, even for the men who violate their consciences to destroy them, while Richard inhabits an unreal world, a smothered world. His is the madness of reduction. He exalts himself at the cost not only of his soul, but of the whole creation. At this point, nothing is impermissible, because things are the way the dead-souled Macbeth declares them to be. A tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. And there, I think, is the terrible task before us. We have to deal with very intelligent, clever, ill-informed idiots. To do so, we must be equipped with the full armor of God. And that includes most especially the virtue of holiness. We must pray that God will wash away with caustic hyssop all the sludge in us still, because we are all sludged. All the sludge of a merely secular world, so that whatever we do, whatever we say, will seem to others to be in possession of the secret of the holy God and the real world that he has made, that secret hidden from the foundations of the world. Thank you all.